we've had will drop off,
Yep.
and I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I actually think they'll come back.
Yeah.
I think it's because our value proposition will be so much stronger.
Yeah.
And they'll drop us off because the price is wrong, but then they'll realise there's no one else out there able to deliver what we can deliver, so they'll come back on our terms.
Right, right.
And so we're transitioning
Yeah.
that pathway now. It's probably about a 5-year strategy for us to get to where we really need to get to.
Yeah, right.
But that's where we're going. So we're going to we'll be prepared to forfeit some of the volume from our existing markets.
Yeah.
Say like a drop in China might be offset by some growth out of Australia or the US.
Yeah.
And that'll be fine.
Yeah.
We'll be good with that.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's all about, higher admission price, higher value add
Yep.
channels all the way through.
And
so
just so much easier to manage, right? Less people and technically.
I've expended a lot of money getting people to the site.
Yeah.
So now I want to extract as much as I can.
Yeah.
And that's where we're where we're going. So yes, we've played both, and we still probably always will.
Yeah.
To degrees, but we're moving to a higher value proposition because I can just see we can extract far more.
Yeah.
I don't want to apologise, by virtue of our price for a second-rate facility. I want a totally world-class facility with the best of the best in it, and all my people are working in fantastic spaces, and we're really proud of it.
Yeah.
Rather than apologising for it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be there. I don't think there's a future there.
Yeah.
A great future there.
Yeah. Right.
And so we're just going, but you get a lot of tension when you're going through that.
Yeah.
Cycle. It's particularly when you're dealing with China, because you get a lot of funny behaviour, with the Chinese market. It creates situations in the business that are, it's quite difficult to manage at times. Well, they're smoking, they're crowd pushing, they're all the things, Mr. China goes to the front of the meeting house and has got his iPad up and he's taking photos, and House and Klaus and Heidi are down the back from Germany and can't see anything. And
they're not used to it.
They're not used to it, and nor do they probably want to come halfway around the world to
get
encounter
shoved
that.
around. Yeah.
So we have those dilemmas.
Right. Yeah.
As a result of that thing.
Yeah.
We're well aware of them. We try and manage them, carefully, but you don't stop it.
No.
Particularly the smoking. I mean, shit.
Smoking and spitting, eh? Yeah.
Oh, it's just horrendous. And it just never stops. It doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah.
It just will never go away. So, and you can have all the smoking signs in the world.
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
Yeah. Right.
So there's a cultural things there.
Yeah.
But look, that's does that mean they shouldn't come? Nah. It just means that maybe they're learning to be tourists as well and learning other cultures.
I think that's a fair point. They are learning to be tourists.
They're learning, and so
some of the newest.
You can't just go and slam dunk them like that. Some of our people get really upset because it's their land that they're spitting on and smoking on and stuffing, cigarettes out on. But, we just got to work our way through that.
Yeah. What do you think the government's role is in tourism leadership?
I've got an insight into this because I was at the Tourism Industry Association when Key became. So I was actually probably heavily involved in the process. I was heavily involved in the process that got John Key to say before he became Prime Minister that if he was the next Prime Minister, he would be the Minister of Tourism. Right. So I've seen the industry for years have second-rate, low-grade, low-rated ministers, and then seen what it's like when you get the Prime Minister or someone of a higher position taking on that role, and the difference is like chalk and cheese. It's the level. It's from non-engagement to engagement. It goes from an industry that was kind of like a party industry to something that was a serious industry. And treated as such. And I saw tourism's spots change hugely. I mean, the media commentary around tourism, the engagement with the media in tourism, the acceptance of people like economists, who never ever talked tourism, all of a sudden started talking tourism in their commentary. So I think the key as the leader, if that's the role of government, was to, as the cheerleader, he certainly raised the bar significantly. And from there, we saw all the other things like, the investment into Tourism New Zealand, additional investment, some of the incentive programs and things that were put in place, the stuff that they need to enable, like, the ability for, air routes and things to be easily developed in and out of the country. Those things are there. I think the government has to play an ongoing role leading tourism. Obviously, funding Tourism New Zealand's, really critical. I think they need to take a look again at as I said before, conservation in the tourism environment, and I think there's a way through that, as I said to you before. But I think they are absolutely central to the leadership within the sector. Right. We have to have a strong government that accepts tourism right up at the top end, and drives tourism forward as a serious industry. When we do that, the confidence levels within the industry just grow immensely. You feel really confident about it. You feel that the government's engaged. You feel like you want to grow. There's a whole lot of things that come off the back, and I've seen that. From over a long period of time, and Key was fundamental to it. He took a really strong position on it and said, look, it might not be the highest value industry in terms of a job created, but it is our new manufacturing industry. Let's kind of look at it like that a little bit. And yes, there are people that are coming in and they're young and they might not stay in the industry forever. But it's still providing employment and jobs for people. In communities like Rotorua, all my children, and all my nieces and nephews and the like, have all had jobs in tourism, as student jobs. They work in them in the weekends. They work in them in the holidays. Rotorua is one of the best places in New Zealand for a student to get work. If you're a student in Rotorua, with all the tourism businesses here, it's a great place. There's plenty of work. If you can get off your tot and go and do it. So the government plays a massive enabling role through TNZ, through regulatory, through just sheer leadership. Just being there and saying the industry's it's serious and it's big and it's where I think national, particularly as a government or as a leader, have failed. I just don't understand properly, is they just totally a derogatory of DOC, and DOC is fundamental to our country brand, and I just don't get that. And I've struggled for a long. I struggle with DOC at times in terms of the way they operate. But I've struggled with the way a government can look at them and say this isn't valuable, because the rest of our country, all of our agriculture, everything we do pretty much as a country depends on 30% of our country's DOC estate.
I personally have an opinion about why they're doing it, but
I just don't understand it. I don't think English would ever understand. I don't think he thinks like that. But for me,
he would make my accountant look like a super exciting party guy.
I know, it's weird. I just don't understand how they can see that backdrop to everything we stand for as a country. On the world stage, from an economic point of view, is trashed, and not managed well, and it's just all wrong. It's just, for me, that's the missing part of the puzzle. And then probably water, possibly at a growing, if not equal level to that now. Because I think that is going to be probably one of the DOC's going to be a test, but water and water quality. As we can say it as much as we like. I can only deal with what I can deal with. In my backyard, I've got a stream that runs through it. It's a bit polluted from dairy farms and industry and council rubbish tips. What are we going to do about it? We could sit back and blame everybody else, but we're not. We're going to take an active stance and we're going to manage it, because I can't afford to have a polluted stream running through my bloody tourist attraction. Simple as.
So, is there anything the government's doing that it should probably leave to the private sector?
No, I don't think there is. I don't think there is. I just wonder whether the government's going to have to play a greater role in investment of accommodation. I possibly would change that around and say, where could they potentially invest for the betterment of the industry? And that's probably an area where, and that runs that line of, is it government or and governments in the past in New Zealand through the Tourist Hotel Corporation have kind of been there before. It used to be government owned and then was sold off. So I don't know if I mean government ownership of those things, but
Yeah.
I think government's going to have to facilitate those things a lot
Right.
harder than they are right now, because
Yeah,
that's the only governments, maybe councils to a limited extent.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, look, there's nothing that I see the government doing right now in tourism where I'd want them to stay out of.
Yeah.
There's probably areas, I think, there's areas in terms of tourism data and research and, those tourism database systems.
Yep.
I think, generally, I think we're quite well served as a sector
Yep.
in that area. I don't think there's, but do I want them out of that? Hell no. I want them.
Yeah.
I want them doing more.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
that
sure.
area, not
Yeah.
less. As a parochial tourism person, I think they, I think they're needed in certain areas.
Yeah.
I'm on the major events panel, and I look at the work that does to try and enable big events. I don't think a lot of those would happen if it wasn't for that central government
Yep.
intervention
Yep.
and enabling
Yeah.
of it to happen, and it's usually leveraged against private money.
Yep.
So I think that there's there's a I think it's strong. I was probably say, there's probably some areas I'd ask them to do more, but not less.
Yeah, sure.
I think they can.
No, and
I just don't. I can't think of any Simon right now where it's where I'm saying they should do less of that. I just don't. I don't see that.
Yeah.
And I'm not a pro government in our life type of person, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
kind of look where there's failure.
Yeah.
And I think the role of government sometimes exists where there's a market failure.
Yeah.
And that's why the likes of a Tourism New Zealand or a regional tourism organisation,
Yeah.
it's almost vital that they're funded out of the general ratepayer or the taxpayer thing, because the industry is made up of so many. It's just a potpourri of different operators who don't necessarily operate on the same spectrum.
Yeah.
And so there's a market failure within the industry because we're not all together. The restaurant down the street's a tourism operator.
Yep.
Probably the biggest tourism business in this town's Pack and Save.
Yeah.
And you ask them, so you're a tourism already. Your tourism turnover would be bigger than ours.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
And yet we're bringing them all here.
Yeah.
It's us sort of doing all the marketing. So, those guys don't see themselves as tourism businesses.
Yeah.
They just see themselves as a supermarket and providing a service to all the customers that walk in the door. But what they forget is a lot of those people, 20% of them probably in this town, are coming from other countries, or out of town. And so, I think there's a ongoing role and a need. I just don't think you'd be competitive as a country unless you had your central government agency out there with tourism offices around the world. They provide us the beachheads that when we go into the US or wherever, you go to the Tourism New Zealand office. It's our embassy. It's our tourism industry embassy. We knock on their door. We sell our product to those guys so they understand it. And they advocate for us in the marketplace. It's they do a lot of work for us.
Yeah, right.
And it's easy to stand back and poke holes at them, but actually, for the most part, they do a bloody fantastic job of it.
Yeah, right.
With probably on world level was probably small amount of money.
Yeah, fair. Okay, what's the private sector's role in leading the tourism industry?
Oh, I think I touched on it before. I think it's around sort of that innovation and thinking, through those areas like sustainability and conservation and things, and taking a much more defined position around those things, and just continuing to to reinvest into it so it doesn't become stale and old. I think that's our job. I think that's our ongoing role. And we've just got to continue to do that well.
Sure. Okay, what are you worried about in the tourism sector?
I'm worried about those things that I mentioned before about when you asked me the question about 2030. I do think about those things a lot because I think they're our they're the kind of elephant in the room that could come back and bite us on the backside. And they just won't bite tourism on the backside, they'll bite our country on the backside because every industry is reliant on those same environmental credentials. So I think those things. I worry about. I'm always worried about air capacity. We're an island nation, removed from the rest of the world. Big source markets other than Australia are all pretty much 8 hours plus away. Australia's 3.5, and it's about a million. Inbound visitors. We are at our success or otherwise of our industry is dependent for the most part on airline connectivity. That's our tram line, and it's our pipeline, and I do worry myself about, the vulnerability of that pipeline.
Yeah.
And the fact that, that is, a lot of the decisions around, movement of capital onto that pipeline is not our countries to determine. It's in the hands of other people, and they can move with the trends, and they can move with the, they
and
can
fuel
ebb
prices.
and flow. Yeah, and so that brings all that into account. They'd be the things that I worry about the most, because I think if you've got, all things being equal, if air capacity was about the same as roughly what it is now, we got a really cool model. We got a really cool model. But as a point in time, you'll come to, you need to grow that again, and there's going to the economics around that are going to have to be viable.
Yeah.
And airlines in their own right are probably a market failure. If you look at them. They're not exactly cash cows. A lot of them.
No.
And that's why governments own them. It's because they provide a different kind of role in a country. But
and New Zealand must have been bailed out twice in my lifetime.
Yeah, definitely twice.
Yeah.
And I don't. And God, would we wanted a New Zealand tourism industry without any New
Without
Zealand?
a flag carrier? No way.
No,
you
wouldn't, because they still carry 50-60% of everybody in.
Yep.
They're still the one airline in the world that has to be flying in and out of New Zealand.
And they're a good one too.
Yeah, they have to be flying in and out of New Zealand.
Yeah.
The problem is they're a small airline.
Yeah.
So they are just, they're just a small airline in the world stage. So there's a lot of other bigger players out there that could significantly influence us as a country. And I do concern myself with that, because I kind of, there's stuff around infrastructure and those things that obviously we need if we keep growing like we have been. But I tend to look at the pipeline and say, and the vulnerability of that pipeline, or the strength of it, and say that's kind of where the biggest risks lie, because I know if that plane doesn't fly in from the Philippines tomorrow, I'm not going to have those 60 people walking in through my door tomorrow, and that's, that's the reality of it, and so I worry about those things. But I think if I was really honest with you, I think I've probably only come to that realisation, and maybe I'm slow, but probably in a strong sense, probably in the last 8 to 9 years. I think I've really, maybe matured in terms of my understanding of where the customer really does come from. And maybe I've been forced to in this business more than ever before, and I've just realised how critical it is. So I call it the leading indicator, and that's how I described it to Adrian. I said, the airline connectivity for me is the leading indicator. You can look at economies around the world, and they have a role to play, and yes, GFCs will come and go. But in the end, New Zealand's a small country internationally. A long way removed from the world. It always, as long as we have our environmental credentials right and everything else, people want to come here. We've probably got more that the world want more of these days than anything else, and so we're probably going to be quite an attractive proposition. So, you kind of think, well, we've got to have, that stuff covered off.
Right. That's a really interesting perspective, because nobody else has really flagged it. Most people take the opposite opinion, which is that, whoa, slow down this airline capacity growth, because we don't know whether we feel like we can sustain.
Just keep in mind, my perspective is I've got a large footprint business that has tended to be able to manage the volume. So I can manage the volume. We can manage the volume, and we're sure as airs could manage it in the off season. But we have days here in the summer, which when you put 5,000 customers through here in a day, man, that's like shocking. And I'm looking at it saying the visitor experience has deteriorated. So don't, I just know that air capacity is still fundamental to all of our access, because I'll tell you what, if it's removed tomorrow, the same business will turn around and give you the other answer. So I just say, I know that we've only got that, we've got a lot of that growth and the benefits of that growth as tourism businesses on the ground, because Auckland Airport in particular got out there and led it.
And you're never going to see the same volumes off cruise ships.
We do about. Last season we did about 40,000 cruise ship customers here.
Wow!
So we get a lot from Tauranga.
Of course.
So they come in here, and we're probably on 8 out of every 10 itineraries.
Right.
We've got a guy who works for us who's been connected into the cruise industry for a long time in Tauranga, and knows how he's very, very well advanced in his science around managing it.
Right.
and we have to manage the volumes and things. So we do incredibly well off it. But don't forget, a lot of those people still pick up the ship in New Zealand.
Yeah.
They still fly to New Zealand to get here. They're not actually arriving
on a boat.
They're arriving into our country on a plane. Now, that's not all of them.
Yeah.
There's some that are certainly embarking in Sydney, and the success of Sydney as a cruise port has quite a big influence on New Zealand too. But a lot of them are flying into our country, so
yeah.
And that's not about cruise ship capacity; that's about air capacity.
Yeah, right.
It just happens they're going to do a cruise as part of their product while they're here. So, I still think it's still.
Yeah,
you can't,
that's a good
can't
point.
ignore it.
Yeah,
and yes, I don't actually know the percentage of visitors that arrive here that have flown into a country versus have picked up a ship in another foreign port.
No,
but I would probably say to you, it's about. I'd probably guess it's probably 60% have flown here. 60 to 70% probably have flown here.
Wow, right.
So they're not coming on ships in the same volume as, not arriving in New Zealand on ships.
Yeah.
Perhaps at the same volume as they are just picking up a ship here as a transfer port.
Interesting.
So yeah, we play pretty seriously in that market. And
right.
Yeah, it's quite a big one for us.
Yeah, right. Okay, look, the last thing I like to ask is, is there anything that you thought we might talk about that we haven't? Anything you thought I might ask that I haven't?
The only thing I'd probably cover off is I've seen changes, as I said at the outset, I've seen changes in this sector through time, and leadership's not. Leadership comes in all different types and forms, and there's private sector, public sector, there's innovative and stuff like that. I just I'd go back to some of that stuff and say that that's the piece. I think there's been good progress made in a lot of areas, and we've been there's good leadership shown by some really serious players in the sector. But for me, the piece that's missing at the moment is just the innovative cleverness. It's just I'm just not seeing it, and maybe I'm blind. Maybe I'm not. I'm just not seeing the new product come through at the level that it used to. And I just don't quite know, and that maybe we've just gone to a flat spot, and maybe you've just got to wait for another wave to come along down the line, and maybe it's not something you can force. But it just doesn't seem to be there in the same abundance that it used to be.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting point. It's like, where does innovation come from? Can you sit at your desk one day and decide to innovate a new tourism business?
One thing, as an industry, I think we're not good at, and possibly we've got a bit better, but I still don't think we're there, is, the leadership around this industry is a career.
Yeah, right.
I reckon we're bloody abysmal at it, and it's partly a bit of a problem because of the types of companies that make up the myriad of little businesses that make up New Zealand tourism. There's not a lot of places someone coming into the industry can go and get a job, It's a corporate place where you can grow and move into becoming a marketing manager, and then it's not
very bottom heavy.
It's not like that. So you've probably got it in the hotel part of the industry. Because there's a lot of hotel brands out there. But generally they're kind of they have general they have service managers, and then they have the general manager, and then they have the head office. It's not like there's just the perception of a limited amount of career development opportunities within the wider tourism hospitality sector. And a lot of as much as I said what I said about my children before, one of the probably to my horror, is that they come and say, why would I want a job where I'm working, I have to work, I could be working 7 days a week, I could be, working the weekends, I want to go to the pub, I want to go and party in the weekends, and I'm working, it's like, why would I want a job like that? And so there's that kind of realisation that, and I've seen it just with my children, because they've got to that age, they've been doing those tourism jobs, then they kind of look at them and say, nah, that's not for me. I want a 9 to 5 job, I want to work the weeks, and I want the weekends to myself. Thanks very much. They've seen me work all sorts of hours all my life, and they're probably saying, shit. So I don't know whether I'm, it's been a good example or a bad one, but it's kind of, I just think...
Demonstrates the need for pathways though, right?
Pathways has always been problematic, and I don't know how you overcome it.
And like in your kid's instance, right? Maybe some clarity would be good. Like, you might work weekends for 3 or 4 years, but then you get the management job and it's a day manager or whatever, and start making your own hours, and I don't know.
Actually, funny enough, like the tourism experience that my children have got have enabled them to get really good jobs in other sectors.
Right.
Afterwards, they've become a really important reference point for them.
Yeah, right.
Like my son's in the army, and part of his getting into the army is he had to talk about where he's worked previously, and what he realised is that Skyline, who he worked with, are a really disciplined company. They're like the army is. And so he started talking about it in his thing and said they've got these disciplines around this, and then he'd really bought into all that stuff when he was there. And all of a sudden he realised he was talking the same values and principles that the army stand for.
Right.
They had been injected into him in a work environment. And the guys in the army, the interview panel, recognised that and said, so you've been exposed to leadership and, what leadership is and what subordination is and, all those things that an army represents.
Yeah. Compared to the average, I'm not saying that the average person who goes into the army is a high school dropout, but they certainly get a tier of those people who have gone.
When he went to the army, he's like degree qualified, so he's he's gone into the army and he's doing electronic and digital warfare. So he's quite a bright techno bright kid. But again, he was able to use that experience to go elsewhere, because they saw value in that, and they saw value in the fact that he'd been working with people. Having customer service was an important part of it. They saw all sorts of connections to. They were making connections in the interview, but you'd be those sorts of things would be really good in a peacekeeping environment, because you understand how to talk to people and how to engage with people across different cultures. It's like, how do it's really interesting how people use that stuff and, and see it.
It's fascinating.
I found it really interesting just watching the whole thing as he went from applying through to that, and how much of what he had learned at Skyline was applied.
Wow.
To their line of thinking.
And you've got what's his name to thank?
Bruce.
Bruce,
Bruce is a good name. So,
right. Awesome.
He's probably influenced a lot of our friends' children.
Because
he just has good systems. It's really cool. It's really cool. He's just instilled them in these young guys, and particularly guys, and some of the girls too. But he's really got them. All of them that have been through that kind of system seem to have been really influenced by it, and it's helped them develop their next stages of their careers and
Awesome.
So I hope that's helpful.
Hey, very helpful.
Like I probably talked my head off, but
that's kind of the point.
You are.